living my life the way my father saw it. Righting wrongs for a ghost. Thinking I'm here to do good. Superman was never real. Just the dream of a farmer from Kansas.
What makes an immersive story? In some cases, it's the relatability, how we identify with the characters and their world through our own personal experiences. In other cases, it's the setup, how we're introduced to these characters and their world through the writing and various visual techniques. The way you set up your film or story is, in my opinion, a more effective way to immerse an audience. Not everyone can relate to a certain story, and not every great film is relatable to its fans. Setups tell the audience what they can expect from a film. It's the introduction to an important element of the story. This is usually the main character, the tone, or just a simple object. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, we spend the first 13 minutes being introduced to our main character and his world. His reveal scene tells us that he's sharp and bold. Going forward, we also know the kind of film we're in for. When Indy has to run across booby traps and outrun boulders, we get the sense of action and adventure, as well as learning that he has an arc for getting himself out of tough situations. We are also introduced to the antagonist, who we see is cunning and always one step ahead of Indy. A good setup is, however, useless if it has no payoff. If we are shown a character trait in the first act, it must come into play later on in the film. An object that is brought to our attention early on in the story has to serve a purpose somewhere along the journey. In Spider-Man 2, we follow Peter Parker as he meets Otto Octavius, a character who later on becomes the film's main antagonist. As he talks to Peter about his goals, we learn that he just wants to use his intelligence to make the world a better place, and that his dream is to build a machine that can do so. Later on, when Peter gives up being Spider-Man and decides to follow his dreams, he gets this advice from his aunt.
Finally allows us to die with pride, even though sometimes we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most. Even our dreams. Spider-Man did that for Henry, and he wonders where he's gone.
In the film's final act, after Otto has lost himself, Peter tries to bring him back. He reminds him of how he spoke of the good of mankind and uses his own personal struggles to make him see the error of his ways.
It was my dream.
Sometimes, to do what's right, we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most, even our dreams.
I can never get over how I simply just adore Spider-Man 2. It's such a well-made movie. We are given two setups, one highlighting the Doctor's goals and dreams as well as creating familiarity between him and Peter. The other having Aunt May give Peter advice about having to compromise in certain situations in order to do what's right. All this leads up to one major payoff where Peter uses his familiarity with the Doctor and his recently acquired wisdom to save the city. Without the setups, this payoff would have just felt convenient to the plot. Setups and payoffs work hand in hand in creating an immersive story. Having just one without the other only pulls the audience out of the film. In his book Screenplay, Sid Field states that, in a screenplay, everything is related. If you change a scene or a line of dialogue on page 10, it impacts the scene or line of dialogue on page 80. To further stress this point, I want to look at a film I feel makes the best use of this concept, the highly underrated In Bruges.
Bruges is a shithole. Bruges is not a shithole. Bruges is a shithole. Ray, we've only just got off the fucking train. Could we reserve judgment on Bruges until we've seen the fucking place? I know it's going to be a shithole.
With this opening scene, we're immediately aware of the kind of film we're watching. The comedic exchange juxtaposed with the dreary score and desaturated colors sets up the film as a comedy, but one with a dark tone. We are also introduced to our two main characters, Ken, who seems to really enjoy being in Bruges and can't help but admire the scenery every now and then, and Ray, who really loathes the place. Already, this is a hint at the contrast between the two characters. Ken's embrace of the situation at hand and Ray's pessimistic approach plays a big part in the film through the choices they'll be faced with going forward. We later find out that Ray accidentally killed a little boy, and his boss Harry ordered him to hide out in Bruges with Ken. It's here where the film's overarching moral is brought out, that actions have consequences. The characters' actions act as the narrative setups, and the eventual consequences are the payoffs. The film is written in such a way that every choice the characters make is deep-rooted in their beliefs, of which are clearly revealed to us through them confessing it. Like in this scene, Ray and Ken talk about killing in self-defense, where Ray mentions that if someone came at him with a bottle, he'd have to strike hard to save himself. Later on, we have the scene at the restaurant where Ray hits the Canadian and his wife, who you might have guessed tries to attack him with a bottle. However, this doesn't go without consequences. Towards the end of the second act, Ken helps Ray get out of Bruges in order to escape Harry, but is later arrested and taken back to Bruges when the Canadian and the police catch up to him. This occurrence has a major impact on the chaos that takes place in the third act. Having a major plot point like this one can seem very out of place if not properly set up. Martin McDonagh, the writer and director, sets up Ray as an impulsive and reckless character early on in the film. So him outright punching the Canadian for voicing his complaints and punching a woman who tries to hit him with a bottle is completely in character, and it also acts as a setup to a very integral payoff. So much in the third act is set off by the choices made by the characters, especially Ray in the first two acts. Ken's demise doesn't just feel like a plot reaction, it's something that the audience has slowly been led to understand. I mentioned earlier the contrast between Ken and Ray, Ken being the more sophisticated, mature and wiser of the pair. All through the first two acts, he exudes optimism and a fatherly concern on Ray. He constantly tries to involve him in his exploration of the art and culture of Bruges and gets disappointed when he fails. He also has a long friendship with his boss Harry, who we find out took vengeance on the man that murdered his wife decades earlier, something that built the love and respect he has for him.
For your integrity, for your honor, I love you.
His relationship with the two characters puts him in a moral dilemma when Harry orders him to kill Ray. He has to decide whether to uphold the code of honor and integrity of his longtime friend or to be compassionate and give Ray a chance to start over. By this point of the film, Ken has been set up as understanding and soft-hearted, but we also know that he's a killer and that he's accepted it as part of his life. Killing, as he says, is something that he'll always do. As much as he shows optimism in all that surrounds him, he's still very skeptical of himself. When he makes the choice to spare Ray and betray Harry's trust, it's the first step he takes towards believing that he can be more than what he's always been, but it's not the crowning payoff. This then unleashes Harry on him, a character that's also been set up as compassionate but values honor more than anything else. He wants Ray dead since he believes that it's the only punishment fit for him. He is relentless and goes to great lengths to adhere to his own set morals and principles, which is something that eventually has him making a rash and fatal decision, his final payoff. Ken's final payoff is also affiliated with death, but the events leading up to it are based off character growth as opposed to set principles. After helping Ray get out of Bruges, he notifies Harry knowing that this will set him off and that he'll come for him instead. The events leading up to this point of the film have had Ken grow more compassionate towards Ray and make peace with himself. The tranquility of Bruges had him reflecting on his past and decide to give Ray a chance to lead a life that he never could. He then awaits Harry, ready to die not knowing that Ray has been arrested and brought back to Bruges. Later on, Harry decides to spare Ken with respect to their long friendship, but changes his mind the moment he finds out that Ray is in Bruges. Once again, he chooses honor over compassion. This has him shooting Ken, who would otherwise get in his way. Weak and quickly bleeding out, Ken slowly but willfully crawls through his own blood and gets a good look of the view of Bruges one last time before jumping to his death. His main intention being to catch Ray's attention and have him escape Harry. This is his crowning payoff. Throughout the film, we've had scenes building the bond between him and Ray, as well as seeing him find peace through the beauty and fairy tale-like nature of Bruges. In the scene where he tries to convince Ray not to kill himself for what happened to the little boy, he tells him that he can save the next boy. This is just him emanating feelings about his own situation. He has killed people in the past, but maybe wants to stop and make up for some of those killings. This is why the sacrifice in the end makes sense. To seal this point, I'm going to attack a movie that handles the protagonist's sacrifice poorly. Yes, Batman v Superman. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually enjoyed this film, even though it has so many problems. So many problems. In the film's climactic battle, Superman and Wonder Woman take on Doomsday while Batman just sort of hangs out. The battle ends with Superman overcoming self-doubt, grabbing the spear and killing Doomsday, knowing that he'll probably also die. This is his crowning payoff. But why? Throughout the film, there's really no scene that shows a relentless hero. He just glides through the scenes wondering whether saving people is worth it anymore. Now, I understand that you can argue that this is just part of his arc, where he goes from self-doubt to making the difficult choice of saving humanity. But there's absolutely no scene anywhere in this 3-hour film that gives him any substantial development. When he goes to his mother for advice,
Be their angel. Be anything they need you to be. Or be none of it. You don't owe this world a thing. You never did.
the blast at the Capitol is presumably his lowest point, when he's lost all confidence in himself and gives up the Superman mantle. But he's back just a couple of minutes later, all because of a short story he remembered on a mountain somewhere. Now, I can understand that the story is supposed to have him see the good in the world through Lois, just like his father did through his mom. However, key plot elements such as this need to be shown rather than tied up in one short conversation. You can't summarize character development in just one paragraph. There needs to be a journey that reinforces the choices a character makes. Superman has been set up as a character struggling to find confidence in himself as a hero, since he sees that he can't save as many people as he wants. There's however no time we are shown him going out of his way and doing his best but ultimately failing. He barely even tries. His world only revolves around Lois. He's always there for her, but not these villagers or even his own mom. The only other times he's on screen is either threatening Batman or being on the verge of giving up. Then how are we supposed to believe that this guy would die for humanity? This payoff just doesn't work. Ken deeply cared for Ray and the film very clearly showed this. It's only when a character truly cares for something or is shown growing to care for something that we get that emotional connection with them. That way, their payoff carries weight and breaks our hearts. The sacrifice in Batman v Superman is more forced. It's just cheap and tacked on. It's only heartbreaking because they wasted such an iconic character. I find myself caring more about a hitman than Superman. This is just simply because of no clear setups and very cheap payoffs. When I look back at some of my favorite films, I don't really remember the plot or the references. I remember the characters and their journey. How they rose above their fears, doubts, and defied destiny. Even those who end in failure, they do it having done their best. I reminisce of their introduction, their growth, downfall, and eventual close. Good setups and payoffs immerse us in stories because they make us feel like we're part of it. They make us experience the journey with the characters. We are able to feel like we're part of that world. And isn't that the reason why we watch movies?